You know I come from a city of sorrow, man. Ugly introduction, red snow, heartaches, heartbreaks, headache. Look, growing up it wasn't no joke. Remember all we
Yo, yo, yo. Happy holidays to everyone. Welcome to ChiGoats, the podcast where I'm your host, Edwan Sanders. I'm back and I'm trying to be more consistent with my content. So I'm just going to give it to you hot and ready like Little Caesar. So today we have a true legend. For episode 20, I want to bring somebody real special to my platform and give him the flowers he really deserved. I met him when I was young, about fifth, sixth grade. He started a youth team at Hales where my pops was coaching at, and my pops immediately was like, "Do you know who that is?" And I'm like, no, what I'm saying, I'm young, And once he gave me the details, the gist, he gave me his background, I'm like, oh, we in the midst of a real legend. I'm talking about eight touchdowns, broke the record at U of I.
Illini history until his senior year, 1990. In Illinois' second game against ninth-ranked Colorado, the Illini trailed 22-17 in the game's final minutes. When Howard scored the winning touchdown, he ripped off his helmet to face the raging home crowd as if to ask, "Are you not entertained?" They were entertained and impressed, too. If the Illini fans found that fun, they had something else coming the next weekend. When 15th ranked
Talking about two-time Super Bowl champion with the Denver Broncos. My guy, my family, this my dog. No other than my family, Howard Griffith Sr. Coach Howard,
Yes, indeed. How are you, my friend?
how you doing,
There we
Coach
go.
Howard? How you doing? Man, it
I'm
been
great.
so long. It been so long. I was just telling everybody how I first met you. You pulled up to Hills in a nice range. And my dad he introduced me and he asked me once you walked away, like, do you know who that is? And me being so young and naive, I told him no. And once I started doing my research, I'm like, oh, we in the midst of a real legend, a real goat, And I appreciate everything you did for me when I was young. When my father left this earth, you took me under your wing and you made sure that I stayed on the straight and narrow all the way up into high school, and I appreciate that so much. You don't even know. My mom, thank you forever. You know what I'm saying? Because she was going through it, and
Yeah.
she needed guys like you, Coach Townsend, Coach Brady, to just hold me down so I can understand life and grow up to be the man that I am today. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, for
Th-
keeping me on my stuff, keeping me on business and
Yeah.
teaching me how to be a man, just like you did your sons. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it means a
appreciate you.
lot, man. But you never can replace a father. But I think that's one of the reasons why I think youth sports and playing, being in group activities is such a powerful thing, and also making sure that you surround your young people or your child with people who have some of the same thoughts and same values that you have. That way, that stuff's being reinforced even when you're
Yes.
not around. And I think that's a big part of, ultimately why I started to have Park Junior Spartans.
Yes, but we're not gonna jump too far. We're gonna take it
Yeah.
all the way back to the beginning. When did you get introduced to playing football?
Man, I grew up over east on 91st and Clyde, which is a few blocks east of Jeffrey. And as a young guy, we would play pickup football,
Yeah.
touch on the concrete, tackle in the grass. The problem was at the church we would play at all the
Yeah.
time on 91st and 92nd and Jeffrey, it was
Yeah.
concrete and grass. So there was always a blurred type of thing. So there was an
Yeah.
occasion that you might get tackled on the concrete if you
Yeah.
weren't careful. But I think that's where it really started, man. And just in the neighborhood playing. I actually didn't play really organized football until I was in 7th grade, and that was flag football. So in
Wow.
7th and 8th grade was flag football for me when I was at St. Joachim. And then I didn't play tap. I didn't put a helmet on, a real helmet with real shoulder pads until I was a freshman in high school.
Wow.
So,
That's a crazy story.
It is, but I was introduced to the game, man. We played pickup football, all over the neighborhood, wherever we could, throwing it around, two-hand touch in the streets. Pole to pole was were the end zones. So you race pole to pole in the end zones were pole to pole. So it was a pretty good time.
Yes, for sure. So why did you choose Mendel for high school?
Yeah. One of the guys that was ahead of me at St. Joachim, his name was Billy Fleshman. He's a minister now out in the south suburbs. He was the coolest dude in the school. Now, granted, there was one 8th grade class, 7th, 6th, all the way down. It was just one class of all.
Wow.
So,
wow. Okay.
So there we couldn't play with the actual football because they were saying and breaking windows. So we were playing sock football. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, it was touched with the sock football. But of course, we put a league ball or a baseball inside of it so the ball would go further. So we always were getting a little bit of trouble for that. But, playing with Billy, he was in 8th grade. I was in 7th grade. We had a really good, essentially a 7-on-7 team. That's what it was because it was flag football. So it was 7-on-7 really. And we were pretty good. And he went to Mendel, and he was an unbelievable athlete. And it was kind of, I wanted to, go to Mendel too. I ended up going there and had the time of my life when I was there. Probably had a little too much fun because that caught up with me when it was time for me to go to college. So I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah. So after Mendel, you transferred to Julian. What went into that transition?
Now, see, here's something I really haven't talked about before. But so my junior year, my mother passed. Wow. So my mother passed. I broke my ankle. So I'm out for the season. Now, so I'm watching, and it's, I had a really good sophomore year. Freshman year was really good too. And, going into the senior year, I'm like, man, this is it. We're going to get the stuff done now. I'll be playing varsity, be doing my thing. Had a couple of games. I think I might have played in 2 or 3 games, and we were lighting people up and end up breaking my ankle. And so I'm done. So I came back the next year, was ready to go. And it was on me. The ultimate reason why I transferred, it was honestly because I had a bad attitude at the particular time. Because I was dealing with a lot of other stuff off the field. And, the coach says, hey, Howard, Coach Wilson, Howard, you know what? I want you to play fullback so someone else can play tailback. And I think both of you guys in the backfield together, man, it'd be really good. And I'm like, I'm not blocking. And all the thing I thought in my mind, I'm not blocking for anybody else. I'm the dude. Right. I'm getting ready to go in what are you talking about? I'm not doing that. And I had friends that played at Julian, which was down the street on 103rd and Elizabeth. And I was like, man, I'm not doing this. This is not what I'm going to do. But before that, we're in practice one day. And honest to God, I am kind of coasting through practice. Mm-hmm. And the coaches had a little way. Coach Wilson, he went to who ended up being a fantastic college player. To Charles Collins was his name. Charles Collins ended up being the #1 player in the country in the class of 87, coming out of Mendel Catholic. He was the #1 player. So he had already been, kind of started to establish himself. And he called me out in practice. I'm like, whoa, I'm getting called out by a junior? No. No. I'm out of here. And so I'm obviously thinking that the head coach has put him up to it. But I said, no, I'm out. I'm gone. So the next practice rolls around. I hop in the car. I drive up to Julian, and I say, Coach Smith, I want to transfer. And he says, only as he could say, because I also knew one of the other coaches, Coach Burns, whose son was 2 years ahead of me, played running back and was at Louisville at the time, but now he was helping out over at Julian. And I said, I want to transfer to Julian. And my dad's out of town, by the way. He's out of town, so he doesn't even know what's going on.
Right.
And Coach Smith says, no, you need to go back over there and try to work it out. I'm like, huh? I ain't going back there. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So I end up lying and said, yeah, I went back. But of course, years later, he told me, I know you never went back over there and said anything to anybody, but I just needed to feel good about this and tell you what to do, and you ain't doing it. So,
Right.
so it turns out, man, so that was kind of how the move happened, but it happened because, I was immature. There's a reason it happened. So when I first circle back, I'll show you why that moment in time, I know when we get a little further through the interview, how that moment in time really changed a decision that I made, later on in life. But there were a lot of coaches and teachers at Julian as well. My dad was an alpha. There were a lot of alphas. It was an alpha that was the principal, the vice principal, and all these different classes that he had people that he knew. So we went over there for the interview. When it was official, he gets back to town. I go over there. We meeting with the teachers and meeting them. And I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm coming over here. So they're telling me about my classes. I'm excited.
Right.
They got me in an AP economics class. I'm like, huh? Whoa. AP classes, that's not for me, right? That's not my deal.
Right.
So I'm in some cool classes, right? They were hard, but I was in some cool classes. But the first week we're playing, or right before the first week, the teachers go on strike.
Wow.
So now we're not playing.
Wow.
Now we are practicing, but we're not playing.
Right.
So I'm like, wait a minute, this can't be happening.
Right.
I decided to transfer the year. The teachers want to go on strike.
Wow.
But, it ended up, ultimately working out. Now, I think being a part of that team and playing for J.W. Smith, to get back to your question, that's what really drove me there, because I knew what type of coach he was, and I'd heard I had friends that played for him, and I wanted to be around that type of coach, and I thought that would be able to help my career and help me go on to college.
That's great. That's beautiful, man. It's a crazy story, but it all makes sense. As you know, I transferred from Hales, and some things you just got to do for the betterment of your life. It may not have felt like, now that you're down the road, it might have felt like you made a decision that you probably didn't have to, but at that time it was perfect for you, and it worked out well for you.
Yeah.
You did well at Julian. You met a lot of people down the road, like Coach Townsend and everything. How did U of I pull you? I know you probably had a lot of offers, a lot of people.
Man, here's the truth behind that. I mean, most people think that, I was offered, I could have gone anywhere I wanted to go. The reality is I really couldn't. I couldn't, because this was the second year of what they call Prop 48. And you had to have a certain grade point average, and you had to score a certain score on the ACT or SAT, whichever one. You had a certain score. So although by the time I got to Julian, academically, I was lighting it up, A's and B's, my senior year. But that didn't correct the mistakes that I had made in my freshman, sophomore, and junior year. It still wasn't enough credits, enough hours. I could have got all A's. It still wouldn't have been enough, because I had put myself so far behind the 8 ball. And then I wasn't a test guy, so that didn't work out for me either. So
been there before.
My choices were, so I had a scholarship offer from Illinois State, Southern Illinois, Northern Iowa. Those were the 3 places, if I'm remembering correctly, those were the 3 places I had a chance to go to. And I was all on board going to Southern, because there was another player at Southern. It was a running back that was from Mendel that was down there playing. But That's
Okay.
not where I wanted to go. And I was like, I wanted to go to Illinois. And the reason I wanted to go there, they had a running back by the name of Thomas Rooks, who was unbelievable out of St. Louis. You say Thomas Rooks, I say Taylor Rooks to you, and then all of a sudden you know Thomas Rooks. It's his daughter. Taylor Rooks is his daughter. See her
Wow.
everywhere. Yeah. So, but they had gone to the Rose Bowl, and they had, this was a high-powered offense. Mike White, they were doing all the things, and so that's where I wanted to go. I would run home from Sunday school from the same church. Right there on 92nd and Jeffrey, and run back home to watch the Mike White show. So that's how I kind of really got ingrained and really started to learn a lot about University of Illinois. And I was like, man, that's where I want to go. I want to play there. And that was it. And so I ended up walking on there.
Wow.
And shoot, I was like, yeah, this is where I want to be. And, the year I walked on, I think they had a guy, Quentin Parker, we still good friends, Jimmy Collins. These guys were all like they were all in like the top 10 running backs in the country.
Wow.
Then there was another guy, and then there was me walking on, just, kind of hanging around, trying to make the squad. But my desire to play there and, and be able to be successful there, that was stronger than any of the other stuff that was out there that may have deterred other people from going there. I just knew that that's where I belonged, and that's where I needed to be.
Wow. Okay. So talk about it a little bit. How was your time at U of I?
Man, the first year I had the time of my life. The first year because I'm not playing,
right?
So all I had to do was go to class. So it was probably one of the best academic years I'd had because I didn't have to go to practice. All I had to do was go to class. I didn't even have to go to study table because, I was really not on the team yet. So, they let me hang around. I'd do my thing. But here's what was cool about that. So guys that I went down there with, there's a guy named Frank Hartley, Mel Agee, Mel, who since passed, went to Washington, and Frank Hartley played at Bogan. So the three of us were there. Okay. So the three of us, Mel, who was brilliant, he went to Washington High School. He was a genius. He just was redshirted. So we play basketball all the time. So here's our basketball team when Mel's not there. It's Nick Anderson, Irvin Small, Kenny Battle, who had just transferred from Northern to Illinois, Frank Hartley, and myself. So we are having the time of our lives. We're playing, we're hooping with them, running up and down the court, dominating the basketball, doing our thing. And so things started out, they were great. And then, I finally, that next season rolled around. I'm like, fine, okay, I can finally compete. I can finally go out on the field and practice. So that was great. I mean, at that point, I'm a redshirt sophomore. So I'm, like most young people, you're looking at the roster. You're like, well, where can I fit in? How can I make this team? And the coach is saying, hey, one of the coaches, Bill Kolar, says, I want young guys on the special team. I don't want these guys that are, got starting on offense, starting on defense. Those guys don't want to put in the effort. You guys that aren't playing are going to give me all the effort you want. And so, that's what it became. It became me trying to figure out how to make the traveling squad because the first game was at North Carolina. So the whole goal, that entire offseason and that entire training camp was, I got to find a way to be able to make the team and make it on special teams. And that's what ended up happening. And so that's where it all got started in special teams. And I spent the year, playing special teams, my redshirt year, and really had a good time, ended up lettering. So, that was a cool thing. And things were really working out for my first 2 years at Illinois.
Okay. And so take us to the day when you broke the record.
All right, let me take you. Let me take you a little earlier than that. So, go back to my sophomore year when I started to play, and I won the starting job and with Keith Jones at the time. Okay. One of the things that happened in my redshirt year is there was a senior that I was competing against at the time.
Mhm.
And, you know, sometimes you know, when you're competing, you know, things happen. But as a young player, I mean, I just played special teams. Now we got a new coaching staff in place. I'm just trying, I'm swimming. My head's swimming in all of this stuff. So I don't know whether I'm coming or going. So, but what I do know is, okay, the coaches say you got to play 5, and we all had scripts. There was a script there, so I knew what I was supposed to do at play 5.
Right.
The problem came if they told me to come in for play 6 after I did play 5.
Right.
So something like that happened. So now I'm panicking. I'm in the huddle. The coach says, get another one. I'm like, oh man, the quarterback's calling the plays. I don't know what's getting ready to happen. I look over to the senior and I'm like, hey man, what do I got? What do I got? What do I got? He refused to tell me. He's like, you need to learn this stuff yourself. And I'm like, now, in many regards, most regards, he was doing what he was supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
You know, he was telling me you need to learn your plays. But at that moment, I'm like, dude, you could have just told me. All right, I get it. I go home and study, but you don't have to put me out here now. Right. Coach ends up telling me to play. We run the play. You know, nothing ever comes of it. But I said at that point, I would never, ever do that to anybody again. I would never put anybody in that position.
Right.
So we started, you know, ended up winning the job, whatever, the next year. So it was great. I'm starting as a redshirt sophomore. I'm playing well, you know, put up some big numbers that year. Then my junior year rolls around. I mean, it was like, 3 years that I was doing really good. But getting to my senior year when I broke the record, we were a pretty good team. We were a team that, you know, the year before, you know, I think it finished in the top 10 in the country. So we were coming back to play again. We had lost Jeff George, who was the number 1 pick in the draft the year before, to Indianapolis, but we still had a really good team. And we were literally not thinking about Southern Illinois. It was not even a blip on our radar. A matter of fact, Southern used to have these unbelievable Halloween parties in October. We'd go down there whenever it was. We'd go down there and party and come back early in my career when I wasn't really playing. So when guys, then we'd have some big fraternities and stuff on campus. They would throw parties and a bunch of guys would come up from Southern. So that summer going into my my senior year, a bunch of those guys are up there and they're fired up. They're like, yeah, we're going to get with you guys. And I'm laughing at them. I'm like, dude, I'm not even going to be playing after the first quarter. Y'all don't know what y'all gonna do. Y'all gonna be dealing with my boy Camino Bell. Yeah, I'm not even gonna be playing, so I ain't thinking about you guys.
Right.
So literally, game comes around. Fast forward, game comes around. In that game, I scored 8 touchdowns, but the first touchdown I was responsible for was a ball that was taken out of my hand. A guy by the name of Kevin Kilgallen, who was a linebacker for Southern, runs through the line, unblocked, takes the ball out of my arms. I'm carrying the ball in the wrong arm, by the way, and runs it in for a touchdown. I mean, we are down 21-7, I think, after the third quarter. So now we got problems. You know, coach is mad, we mad. You know, it's like, what are we doing? You know, what's happening here? We had just beat Colorado the week before, but we weren't focused. We were looking ahead because we had Ohio State coming up.
Right.
And literally, you know, after the ball gets ripped out of my hands, you know, I think we run off like seven quick touchdowns, and I'm done. You know, by the beginning of the fourth quarter, I'm done. You know, and I'm like, all right, enough's enough. So it's funny. My coach at the time, John Makovic, I was going down to host an event in Illinois about a month ago, and I called him on the way down there, and we're just talking, and so he says, I said, Coach, you know, tell me about this 8 touchdowns, right? He's like, you know, I didn't want to go for the 8th touchdown. You know, I said, you know, Coach Smith, who was the offensive line coach at Illinois, was now the head coach of Southern. We're not trying to show him up. He looks at me, or he doesn't look at me, but he says, Howard, you begged me to go get another carry. And I'm like, Coach, it's no way. I didn't beg you to go back in. Yeah, you begged me to go back in. And I said, Coach, wait a minute. You 81 years old, right? He's like, yeah. Well, I don't have to believe you. I'm sure some things have slipped since you 81. And
Right.
he says to me, he said, Howard, you play fullback in the NFL, right? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, well, you ran into a lot of people, so you got some brain stuff going on, so you don't remember either. So I think that's where we're ultimately going to lead the story is right there. But, it was a fun time, man. It really was a great team effort. It's unfortunate the way it happened, how it played out, because we needed to play well because we were getting ready to play Ohio State, who was highly ranked at that time. But I should have played the lottery. That was a great night in Champaign.
Yes.
Woo! 15th ranked Illinois hosted Southern Illinois. It lacked the tension of the tug of war with Colorado, but not the drama, in the form of 8 consecutive touchdowns by Griffith himself. You heard that correctly. 8 touchdowns. He scored every point except the extra points, setting an NCAA record that stands to this day. Drafted in the 9th round, Griffith went on to a 10-year NFL career, including 2 Super Bowl titles with Denver. But Griffith will always be remembered for his record-setting day back in 1990. And if he likes, Howard can reminisce about his game-winning touchdown against Colorado with Colorado's former offensive coordinator, a guy named Jerry DiNardo, who works nearby.
Yes, 8 touchdowns in one game, Coach Howard, is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. That's a crazy story. I don't think nobody ever broke that record to this day.
No, it's been tied. It's been tied. So it's funny. So a young fella, maybe 3 years ago, he played at Buffalo. And he was getting close, and he should have broke the record, and he would have broken the record, but the coach put another running back in who he thought needed to get some reps, and that's the only reason it stayed. So there have been some guys that have gotten close, but it hasn't happened. Marshall Faulk was the first guy that I thought was getting ready to break it when he was at San Diego State. I didn't think I was going to have a record for a year when I was watching Marshall play. So, a matter of fact, I saw him about 3 months ago, and we were laughing about it. We were at an event in Philly, and we were laughing about that. I'm like, man, you about to knock me out the record books? I just wanted to hang around for a little while, and you go on the NFL, and you're a Hall of Fame and all that stuff. I could at least have something. You can at least let me have something. So, that we had to laugh out of that.
Yeah, man. That's big time, man. That's one of the reasons. Of course, you're a Chicago legend, man. I'm forever keep saying that. You're a Chicago GOAT, man. It's beautiful how we can tell the story from where you come from to where you are now, man. It's beautiful. Can you tell us how did Chicago impact your life?
I think in a lot of ways, man. I think about going back to just how we were playing football when I was first getting started. We had one of my buddies that lived up the street. I thought he was a million years older than I was. His name was Charles Swint. I thought he was a million years older, but he was the one that always organized, whether it was softball games, whether it was basketball games. He had us playing in church leagues. I was going all over the city playing in, basketball church leagues for when we were all attending Merrill Avenue Baptist Church. And he would put all these things together. And, and this was when Chicago State was really big. The summer league, the summer leagues have never been anything like they were back in the day. I mean, it was incredible, just all the people that would show up to Chicago State and watch, all the, superstars, whether it was Jordan, Mark Aguirre, Isaiah. I mean, anybody was coming to Chicago to play in those summer leagues. So being around that, seeing those type of players around, going down to, the historic, legendary Cole Park over in Chatham, watching those guys hoop over there.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that. But then, also it was about, my upbringing and playing baseball. I played for Southside Little League, who now plays over in Thule Park off of King Drive. But, we played over we played off of 83rd Street. I can't think of the street now. And then our Pony League teams played at which is now Jesse Owens field. So I just think that there are so many times, right? That was where, when I first said that I wanted to be a champion, was because I was playing baseball in Stony Island Park, which was the name of it. And our head coach, Mr. Bond, who played collegiately, was an unbelievable player. His sons, Walt Bonds, played at Collins and Whitney Young and Collins, and went on to Minnesota, and now is a Hall of Fame motivational speaker. His oldest sister played for USC with Cheryl Miller. They came back to a game. They came to Chicago, and that was the first time I had seen what champions look like. It was USC's women's basketball team was just out at the park hanging out, watching these little young kids run around, watching their teammates' little brother play baseball. So when you start to think about just all the different things, and whether it was a neighborhood, whether it was neighborhood guys saying, "Hey man, you cool, you don't have to get in the gang, you don't have to do this, you need to stay on this path." We'd play softball. It would be the GDs versus the peons is what we would call, and so that thing would happen, and so it was a different era. It was a pretty cool era too. And, I'm not to say that we didn't have our issues and things, but it just seemed like a different time where when people were all looking out for each other, and if you saw something in someone, you were really trying to cultivate it and trying to make sure that person got to the next level, and didn't, regardless of what you were doing, you were trying to help that person, get to the next step, get to the next point in their lives, and try to be productive, and not necessarily make some of the decisions that they may have made at that point.
Yes, man, that's huge. I definitely wish that my generation could understand that. We definitely have lost sight of that. The tragedies that I've heard and witnessed and indulged in, from going to Hells and being at the Junior Spartans practice, like it's crazy. They don't care for athletes anymore, or people that's trying to do right now. It's just no bullet have a name for anybody. And I wish we can come back to the old times. If people have a future, let's let them live into their future. Don't nobody deserve to die. Like all this crazy violence now is just insane, and it kind of made us who we are, though. Going through those different adversities, it shaped us into the men that we are today. So even though I hate it, I gotta kind of thank it, because it gave me tough. It made me tough. It gave me the shield I need to take on the world. Being a black male, it ain't easy for us. So it gave us that shield to fight. And I'm thankful for Chicago for it. I know you are too.
No doubt. Oh, no doubt.
So let's talk about your draft process. How did that go?
The draft process was real interesting, right? So as I'm, learning the game, playing the game, at Illinois, I was mostly used more as a tailback, because truth be told, I really wasn't that great of a blocker, or I wasn't a willing participant in that part of the game. Later on, but my junior and senior year, my sophomore year, the running back I was playing with, Keith Jones, made it very clear: if you don't block for me, I ain't gonna block for you. So I was kind of incentivized to do it. But it was interesting. Back then we had 12 rounds. I was what we'd call a tweener. So, I was probably, 5'11", 205 pounds. And, some of the tailbacks that were coming out at that time, some guys like Nick Bell, who was 6'4", like 250, but he could run 4'3". Eric Bieniemy was coming out at that time, and Eric's like, 5'9", maybe, 195 pounds, but was, tough as nails. So I was kind of in that weird position. It was another kid, not a kid, but another guy, Gerard Bunch, who played at Michigan. Ended up being a first-round draft pick by the Giants. He was a fullback. He was 6'3", 240, right? So, I was just kind of, I was just trying to figure out, where I'm going to ultimately fit into the system. And, it was really a different time because we didn't have you had meetings, you had different things going on, but the information was so much different than it is. It was nowhere near as vast as it is today, where, as soon as you run a 40, everybody knows it. Then if you wanted to know the 40 time, you needed to call a 1-900 number to figure out what the 40 time was for a particular player. So combines weren't on TV, none of that stuff, evaluations, that sort of stuff wasn't out there. So, it was crazy. And, I thought I was better than being drafted, ended up getting drafted in the 9th round, thought I was better than that, but getting drafted in the 9th round by the Colts, it was all right. But the challenge was this. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts had Eric Dickerson, who they just given a new contract to, so he was happy. This guy named Albert Bentley, you have to look him up. He was probably one of the first big-time third down backs that offenses really started and defenses needed to focus on to be able to stop. Anthony Johnson, who was taken in the 2nd round from Notre Dame, and that was about it. That's all they kept active. So I'm sitting here, and I'm like, I'm the 9th round pick. There's a 2nd round. There was another 9th round pick that was really good named Clark. So I'm like, I'm sitting around like, I'm not gonna make this team. What are we doing?
Right.
I ain't gonna be here. But during that process is really when I learned to start really working out and doing the things I needed to do, and really started to kind of focus on just seeing how teams were made up. And one of the things I learned early was at Indianapolis, the veterans, they wanted to do a lot of hazing stuff and tell rookies they got to do this and they got to buy this, all of this foolishness. Right. And the problem was they weren't a very good football team. So I'm like, how y'all worried about us? Whether we singing, y'all got a preseason game this weekend and y'all gonna get trounced because y'all too busy worried about us. So, you learn that part of the game, right? So, I eventually get cut at I think the final cut. I ended up getting cut, and I was so happy. I couldn't wait to get out of there. But I ended up signing on the practice squad with the Buffalo Bills. So I spent the next year and a half in Buffalo playing for the Bills on their practice squad. And there is when I think I started to really learn, what this game was about and what you needed to do to be really good at it. And, being around a guy like Thurman Thomas every day was amazing. Because I'm going to tell you, Thurman knew he's an NFL Hall of Famer, but he doesn't nearly get the credit that he deserves about the game because he was so far ahead of the game. He knew everybody. He knew all of Jim Kelly's reads. He knew every position needed to run, and you needed to, because that team didn't huddle. So on one play, he could be the running back. On another play, he could be the X. He could be the Y. He could be everywhere. So he had to know all this stuff.
Right.
So he knew it all, and he could read defenses. He was unreal. So watching him work, and then watching guys like Bruce having to practice against Bruce Smith and Darryl Talley and Cornelius Bennett, it was an amazing experience because I learned. That's where I ultimately learned how to work. Right. And it was interesting because there I only needed to come to practice. I only needed to show up to the facility on Wednesday and Thursday. All the rest of the time, they were like, you don't have to come. But I would go over there all the time anyway because the facility was right out my back door from the apartment complex. Right. So just being in that atmosphere, being around those guys, really started to shape, who I was and understanding what you need to do to work and what it takes to, get to a Super Bowl, all of those things. So to be able to watch the locker room and watch how these guys moved, and to be around a coach like, Marv Levy, who was unbelievable, way ahead of his time. You take a team to a Super Bowl 4 years in a row. Yeah, you lost all 4 of them. But the fact that you took a team there speaks volumes about, just what you knew about the game and how they put teams together.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a fascinating time while I was on the practice squads.
Okay. And after you transitioned to the Denver Broncos.
So I spent a year and a half in Buffalo. Then that second year I spent in San Diego on their practice squad.
Wow. Okay.
Their backfield was Marion Butts, Natron Means, dude named Ronnie Harmon, Rob Bernstein. Who am I missing? I'm missing somebody, but it was like 4 first-round draft picks in this room.
Yeah.
And this is when things changed for me. When I was in San Diego, Bobby Beathard was the head coach. And Bobby Beathard says, hey, Howard, what do you think about moving to the fullback position? Because at the time, Marion Bus was on that team. Everybody was hurt or holding out. So the only two people that were healthy was the dude that's trying to make the team, me, and their second round draft pick, Natron Means.
Right.
So that was it. And they had converted a linebacker to come over and play some fullback. So it was just 3 of us that were healthy.
Right.
So they let me start the scrimmage. So I start the scrimmage and I'm rolling. We getting this thing rolling, and I'm like, wow, this is easy. Oh, this all you got to do? But it turned out, again, remember I tell you, you never know who's watching, and you never know, what circumstances may happen. So you always need to be out there giving your best.
Yes.
The scrimmage happens, and then the Rams, because it's against the Rams, they're like, well, man, Natron looks good. He said, that's not Natron. That wasn't Natron. He was out there the first run. That wasn't him. That was one of our free agent running backs, right? He's like, wow, I think we could use him. So as we continue to move forward through camp, we still had the injuries. Bobby Beathard says, hey, what do you think about playing fullback? And at this point, I'm so frustrated because, remember, I'd been in Indianapolis where they kept 3 backs active. I'd gone to Buffalo where they really kept 3 backs active, and the guys that were inactive were way better than me. So I'm getting to a point where it's like, man, I'm not going, if I want to play in the NFL, I got to play the fullback position. Right. So I embraced it, learned to play it. And next thing you know, I get called in. We're playing the 49ers, the last preseason game in San Francisco. And Sylvester Crooms, who's our running back coach, calls me to his room. He says, listen, we're trying to move Eric Bieniemy. If we can move Eric, you'll be on the team. I'm not sure it's going to work out, but if we can't move him and we have to release you, the Rams and Miami want to sign you right away. So we play the game. That happens. We get back to San Diego. Cut day is happening. It's like 5:00 in the evening. I'm like, man, I ain't got a call yet. I've been watching my buddies all take their playbooks over to the facility, and I'm still sitting in the hotel just rocking. And then they finally called me, and they were just like, hey, this couldn't happen, but you're gonna be in a place. So just stay by the phone, and you'll find out what happens. Shoot, I'm getting ready to board a plane. Back to Chicago because I hadn't gotten a call yet. The stewardess comes, gets me off the plane. I go take the phone call, and it's the Rams wanted to sign me. So I hop on. I go to another terminal for another plane to fly up to LA, which was, in hindsight, was really dumb. Because I could have been on the train and been there that much quicker. But I was thinking, again, my thought process, why are you putting me on the train? You must not want me if you put me on the train. I can't fly me up there. But it would have been so much quicker if I had just hopped on the train and gone. But, but that's, and from there, man, that's where it started. So, I played fullback, blocked for Jerome Bettis for a couple of years. they have expansion with the Jaguars and the Carolina Panthers. I get drafted as an unprotected free agent or player. I get drafted by Carolina. And have a great time there. And here's why I want to talk a little bit about Carolina.
Okay.
Just to tell you back, so we can circle back to that experience that I had as a redshirt freshman in Champaign.
Right.
Frank Wright, Jack Trudeau, and Kerry Collins were the quarterbacks in Carolina at the time. I knew Frank Wright because he was the backup quarterback at Buffalo. He blacked up Jim Kelly. I knew Trudeau because the Illinois days, and he was at Indianapolis when they drafted me. He was still on that team. And so one or the other, it was two fullbacks. It was myself and Bob Christian. Bob Christian played at Northwestern, had a great career there. And Frank Wright, Bob and I would talk after every play. You know, what's going on? This is what we got, just going back. And he's like, Howard, why you competing against Bob, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know that. What's the problem? Well, why are you guys sharing information? I said, I'm glad you asked. I said, there was a time I didn't know something, and I asked one of my guys at the same position. There was a senior veteran guy that I was competing against for a job, and that dude wouldn't tell me. And I said at that point, I would never do that to another person. So that really came full circle, it really was something that I had continued to build on and develop throughout my playing career. I would never put a player in that position ever again, no matter if we were competing for a job or not, because the way I looked at it is, if he doesn't know it, our group is not strong enough.
Right.
So why would I not try to help our group be the strongest? So where I continue to see that play out is when I finally get to Denver. And there's a young guy. I come in, I'm the quote unquote free agent guy that can get the run game over the top where they wanted to, but they had a young 3rd round draft pick that they had spent, and he was supposed to be the future. We talked, and we still tight to this day. And I always told him everything we talked about, what I see, why I do this, but it made our team better. He ended up being one of our best special team players on the team, because there wasn't enough reps at the fullback position for him, but he was able to excel at special teams, that he was cool with that, because he was like, I'm doing my thing over here. Right. If I have to go in for you, that's cool, but I never kept information or would tell him the wrong thing to do and thinking that that's going to help him or help us. Right. It's about strengthening the team, not weakening the team.
Yes.
And that's really where I understood that when I got to Denver and really could put some of that stuff into effect.
Okay. Talk to me. How good was the Denver Broncos when you joined the team? 2 Super Bowls is very hard to do. Watching the league from the outside looking in, you being there and living through 2 of them, man, that is huge. Talk to me. How good were you?
So they were a good team the year before. They lost to Jacksonville because a player didn't run off the field and there was a penalty. That wasn't the only reason, but people remember a player was running off the field and didn't get off the field in time. So that extended, it was a penalty, so it extended the play. So Jacksonville ended up scoring and winning the game on that. So they were already a good football team. They really were. And they were running a West Coast offense, which traditionally was out of split backfield. It really didn't have a power game to it. It was more finesse than it was power. But so when they signed me, and the reason they signed me is because the summer before, we were playing them in non-conference. We went to Denver and practiced against them for a week. So remember, I told you never know who's watching.
Right.
You never know what situations come up.
Right.
So they like, this is what we want to do. We want to start running, weak, strong and power and more of the power game, and let Terrell be the guy and have put a fullback in front of him, because they had shown some things that it could really work.
Right.
But Aaron Craver, who was a second round pick out of San Diego, no, it wasn't. Oh shoot, I'm blanking on the school right now. But he was a second round pick, really a talented player. So when I get the call in free agency, hey, we want you to come to Denver and we need you to be here day one. Like, well, y'all got Aaron Craver. What you need me for? Well, we want to create a little different. We want to do some different things with our scheme. And that's what ended up happening. And that scheme, I had come from a team in Carolina where the offense was, hey, we had three jobs to do, right? Well, if it was three, don't turn the ball over, but it was about kicking. All right, you either gonna punt, kick a field goal, or extra point. That's all you can do. Don't turn the ball over. Don't do nothing else.
Right.
We got a good enough defense. And it ended up proving out that way. We that second year ended up playing Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. But when I got to Denver, man, it was a whole nother world. I mean, it was, a situation where I get into a meeting room and, the guy at the front, Gary Kubiak, is saying, we need to average 40 points a game. I'm like, 40 points a game? I'm leaving a place where, when I was with the Rams, we couldn't score. We couldn't get out our own way. And by the way, we ran the same offense that Emmitt Smith and those guys ran when they were in Dallas winning all the Super Bowls. We ran that same offense at the Rams, but it somehow it didn't work the same way for us as it did for them.
Right.
But, man, so I'm sitting there like 40 points. Like, man, okay. And, man, that thing was rolling. We had it rolling. And, I mean, defense would be playing well, Rod Smith and McCaffrey and Sharp. And, man, it was unreal. And John could still throw the ball. He was at the end of his career, but he could still, when it was time to throw it, he could throw it. He could still throw it. So, that was a really good team because, you talk about winning one and then, going back and winning the second one was, it was unreal.
Yeah, man, that's huge, man. Being a kid from Chicago, winning 2 Super Bowls, man. I hope the kids can see this and know that you can be from where you come from. That don't show your future. That don't control your future. You can control. You just got to put the work in and work really hard for it, man. So my side question from that is, what was your welcome to NFL moment like? in game wise, like when you like, oh yeah, this is NFL football right here.
Man, there were a bunch of those now. There were a bunch of those. I'm trying to think. Let me see. Because it's crazy. I've never been asked that question. It was probably I was one of the plays that sticks out to me is I was playing for the Rams. I was playing fullback. Jerome Bettis is the guy. We're playing against the New Orleans Saints. And Sam Mills, Hall of Fame middle linebacker, we ended up being teammates later on at Carolina. But Sam Mills on a good day might have been 5'10", and they called him a field mouse. He's an NFL Hall of Famer. This dude was unbelievable. But, they had, Ricky Jackson and Keith Swilling and Sam Mills. This linebacker crew was unreal. They were the real deal.
Yeah.
I go in for a lead block on Sam, and it doesn't turn out so well for me. It's just because you might have the stature that says that you shouldn't be playing height-wise, it's a reason that he had been a Pro Bowler. There's a reason that he's a Hall of Famer. This dude, man, he knocked me out like dude, like, what are we doing? Is this really what's going on around here?
Yeah.
In game, that was probably the first in game experience. But remember, I spent time on a practice squad, so watching Eric Dickerson up close was crazy. Watching Bruce Smith up close, Thurman Thomas up close, Andre Reed up close.
Yeah.
It takes me back to, honestly, I'm on the practice squad. We're in Buffalo, and we're getting on the elevator, and we're going up to, I guess the dining hall was upstairs because the practice facility was in the stadium.
Right.
So I'm getting on the elevator. Andre Reed, who all pro, makes the Hall of Fame, gets on the elevator, and he's like, "Hey, man, what's your name?" I'm like, "I'm Howard." He said, "I'm Andre, man." He said, "What, this your first year?" I said, "Yeah, it's my first year." He said, "Oh, man, don't worry. Before you know it, you'll be 8 years in." And that always stuck with me. It was just like, it's not, he could have just been saying something.
Right.
But the fact that he took the time, first of all, to talk to me, because I'm just running around on defense, show up for practice a couple days, and I'm not even around.
Right.
But there were a lot of elements that I learned, from being on those practice squads and being around, those caliber of players and watching them work. And I learned a lot about when I finally got my shot, which is why I worked as hard as I worked. So, most people would take Tuesdays off. Tuesdays is the universal day off in the NFL. I never took Tuesday off. I was always, at the facility. I might have showed up early and just got out of there. But I always came in to do work. And the reality is, on those championship teams that we were on, everybody was in there on Tuesday. Even if you wanted to go somewhere, you were still there. You just came in, and it would not be uncommon for guys to show up at 4 o'clock in the morning because they trying to get on a flight to go somewhere for the day and come back. It's just kind of the way it was. So off days weren't a big deal for us. We didn't take them because you knew, the biggest thing is that there's only so much time that you get to play the game, and you get to play it at a high level, and you get to be on a team, if you're fortunate enough to be able to win championships. That window closes so quickly. And I don't think people really understand how quickly that window closes, because I think as fans and as players that are living in the moment, you will say that, okay, man, if we get a quarterback, right? You hear this here in Chicago. Now, if everybody was screaming to get a quarterback. They got a quarterback now, and now some other things aren't working out. If we can get an offensive lineman, if we can get this, but the defense is getting older. So everything has to align, and you have to be there and really to take advantage of that opportunity, because the window closes so quickly, and the next thing you're sitting around and you're a bad team. And one of the things that crystallized that was we're in Carolina. We lose the NFC Championship game to Green Bay. They go on and win the Super Bowl. We're on the team playing back, and one of the rookies says, "Man, we're gonna be good next year, right? Because this is what people do. A year more of experience. We get a couple more players."
Right.
It was a long time before they went back. Got the chance to go back to the Super Bowl, because it doesn't happen. And like anything else, you say, "Oh, we won 6 games this year. We can win 9 games the next year because we'll be much better." That's not how it works. That ain't how it works. You know that.
You definitely don't work like that. It could take up to some years for you to get back to tip-top shape as you need to. But so fill us in. How many years did you end up playing in the league, and when did you end up hanging your cleats up?
Man, so I ended up with playing 11 years in the NFL. When did I end? I think 2001, maybe. 2001. Had a neck injury. I wouldn't had I played that year, I was going to be done. I already knew, this thing was over. So I was already cool with, going on, time to move on. So we were done with that, and then I got right into broadcasting, and I spent, I think, 2 years out in Denver broadcasting, doing stuff for the Broncos, for Colorado State, and doing some stuff for an arena football team that was out there, the Orange Crush. Or was that the name of them? Yeah, I don't remember. And then, I came back to Chicago, and so I'm in my 18th year at the Big Ten Network, which is crazy to think. I haven't done anything for 18 years, but I figured out a way to do this. So, things have been good. I can't complain.
Yeah, so I want to rewind a little bit. So you came back home to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
What made you start the Hyde Park Junior Spartans?
Eyes are up. Everybody up, everybody up. Next command. So it's down, set, hut. When I say hut, we're taking a short jab step. Look at the jab step. It's quick. It's quick. It's quick. So when I was still doing stuff in Colorado, so I was commuting, going back and forth.
Okay.
And then Little Howard and Houston were wanting to play football because Howard played when we were out in Colorado. So then when we got here, Coach Randall's son, Malcolm, wanted to play too. So they ended up playing. They found a league, but it was on the west side. It was on the west side of Chicago, the Lawndale Falcons.
Lawndale Falcons, yeah.
And I'm like, well, what are we doing? Is nothing south? I mean, we're breaking our necks to get over here every day to practice. I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And it was actually it was nuts, because it was really when Coach Randall decided he wanted to get into coaching. It was the same time I wanted to get the Spartans started.
Yes.
And they both started at Hales at the same time. But it was really about, I didn't see, now maybe there was something here and I didn't see it, but I didn't see a tackle football organization that was around that I wanted to be. And keep in mind, I knew the Chicago Public Schools had started a program, because I was a big part of getting that started with my high school coach, J.W. Smith. So I knew that, but that was, you kind of needed to be, the way it was originally set up, you kind of needed to be associated with the school to be able to play. And, there were some things, So I said, we need to start our own thing. Well, first thing was like, we need a place to play. Well, where are we going to play? Well, if you go to Hales, we can go to Hales. They got a new field. So it just started, just started talking with the principal, with Knowles, and figured it out. And, it was really, man, I'm going to tell you, the first 4 or 5 years, I mean, we had that thing rocking and rolling. It was rolling the whole time, but it was just the amount of people that were involved, and it was so much fun in those earlier years. The later years were fun, but I don't think anything replaces when you're first starting something. And it was, it was so much fun to be over there at Hales and practicing and, hanging out after practice. And it was just a blast. But, we talked a little earlier, my whole reason to have it in Hyde Park, not only for where the field was, but I wanted to make sure that, everyone could come together, and regardless of what your background was, you would be in front of people that could have an influence and could help you down the line. Moms, dads could all come together. And it's not crazy, I guess it's not, but to this day, there are still, groups of people that are hanging out and hanging around, and you can catch them at this place or that place that are still spending time together. But, I had a really good group of people, and, Miss Patrice was a huge part of it for us, of keeping that thing going. And Dawn was in the early parts, and her husband, Don Graham, was a huge part of getting things going. Man, we had that thing. It was a good thing, and I wish, but it had just gotten so big and I wanted to coach, but I could never coach. I was always talking to parents, handing out equipment, messing with concession stands, picking up garbage, turning on generators. And I'm doing all of this stuff. I'm
Yes.
like, do I ever get a chance to coach around this place? I mean, what?
Yes. Yeah.
So, man, it just wore me out. So,
Yeah.
it was a good time. It was a good 11-year run. So I was excited and proud of it.
Yeah, Coach Howard, I don't even think you understand the connections that I made with all the guys there from that. We are still all cool, from Eric Rooks to Jay Griff to Miles Young to like we go way back. Of course, your son, both of them, Houston and Howard, they still my dog. We still locked in. Like, I could never like repay you for all of like it. I have memories that just pop in my head. The time you pulled up to the school with the Big Ten Network truck, like that's like an unforgivable moment. Like, I've never seen anything like this or been close to it. And that's when I really start liking on Ohio State, and then Houston started the trend. Let's just start wearing straight Ohio State stuff, cleats, gloves, bands. Like, we went crazy. We just started just joining trends, and it helped us. It helped us to stay kids within the madness around the area, because that's not a great area to be in, even still to this day. 49th and Cottage, that park across the street, it gets wild still. But when we got after Hill's practice and it's our time to shine, it was like we could be who we are as kids and work hard together and try to come to a common goal every Sunday. A particular moment that stand out, my 8th grade year, that's when Coach Foster was the coach, when we had a Brema and Ryan and Eric and Justin Gardner. We had that was a really good team. We're playing Bridgeport right now. Mind you, I've never seen you get out of character. You have always been just stand-up guy, nice, cool, calm, collective through anything. You know what I'm saying? Bridgeport game, the refs was definitely on some other stuff with us. And particularly, a kid got punched. A Brema retaliated because he was the kid that got punched. He gets punched, get kicked out the game. Now, we all, the crowd, you being on the sideline, everybody saw what fully happened. And when I say you was livid, oh my God, you went off on everybody, the refs, the other team. You walked to the other sideline to talk to their athletic director for Bridgeport. Like you took it to the next level on how like mad you was about how they was calling this game. I've never seen you get like that. That actually gave us energy on the field to win that game through all the BS. We still won by 2 touchdowns. Through all the mess. It was kind of crazy. But I never forget that moment. You was so hot. Like, that's like you cursing. I've never seen you get like that. I was like, that's Coach Howard. Like, it was crazy. And I know you will never forget, we just could never get over the hump with Homewood Flossmoor Vikings on every level. We could never get over the hump, no matter if we was at home, no matter if we had to go to HF. We could never get over the hump. It was crazy.
You know what? And I tell you, there are always going to be times like that and teams that you can't. And first of all, Homewood Flossmoor had a unbelievable program.
Still do
for many years. Yeah.
Still do to this day.
It is well organized, well done. Well, they get the very most, and they also, where else if you're out there, where else you playing? You're playing at Homewood, and you're going to Homewood High School. Okay, I get it. In Chicago, you kind of got to choose to be with the Spartans, or you might have gone with the Mighty Men, or you might have went over here. You might,
Chaos,
all of that stuff.
All type of
all of that. You got all kinds of options, but ultimately that's not, it's not an excuse, but it's the real power in it, in all of these youth programs is at the end of the day, if they're run properly and the right people, and people are in it for the right reasons, right? Because it ain't a money-making venture. you're going to spend way more money than you ever make to cover everything.
Yeah.
And I still hear Miss Patrice now talking about Howard. We don't even have helmets for these people, and they ain't paying fees. And I finally had to say, don't come ask me if you can play, because I'm going to say yes. You need to go ask somebody that's going to be responsible. So Miss Patrice became that responsible person. She'd say, well, this is what we got to do. But because it was really, it was about the kids. It's about you guys and the experience. So it wasn't necessarily that I was mad that the play was the way it was called. It was because you weren't giving our young people who they're just out here doing what they're supposed to do, what we're asking them to do. And when somebody breaks the rules, that, you know, there should be consequences. But if you don't call it for whatever reason, you could have missed the play. I don't know. But when you make it, you know, so clear that this isn't the way it's going to be, we just ultimately just wanted everyone to be on a level playing field and everyone to have an opportunity. And that's all youth sports is really about. It's about an opportunity to go out and learn how to be a part of a team, learn how to win, more importantly, learn how to lose, and learn how to be a good teammate. And that's what it really comes down to. And, you know, there always be issues with referees. They ain't perfect. I mean, listen, them guys getting $30 a game. I mean, you really think it's a hobby for them at this particular point, right? I know some of them want to continue to move on, but the reality, I mean, you have a referee that's been out here, you know, for 8 games already. You know, he or she's gonna miss some stuff, but you know, that doesn't take away the fact that we believe you were wrong. So you know, it's part of it. Hey, it's part of it, and you know, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun being a part of it, and again, it was really about, you know, the exposure side of it, being able to be around different people, to be able to create relationships with people that you know, hopefully that you can turn around and be able to pick up a phone and call or text or whatever. That's the power in being a part of an organization. It's the relationships that you create inside of that organization, because you take those relationships everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you go to Texas. It doesn't matter whether you go to California. You can still connect with someone who was on that team at some particular point. And I promise you, when you run into them, it'll be like, you know,
old times.
Time hasn't passed. It'll be just like old times. You could not see somebody in 10 years and you'd be like, oh man, remember that time we was in the back of Hales and we were doing this and doing that and we wasn't supposed to? Oh, that's what it's about. Because trust me, at 57 years old, I still get together with dudes that I played with in college or guys that I played with in high school, and it's the same stuff. Things don't change. And I think that's why, you know, being a part of a team is cool, and it's really an experience that I don't think a lot of people understand just how important and impactful it can be to your life.
No, for real. And on top of that, you touched on exposure. You did something huge for the program. A couple years straight, we was blessed to make it to the national championship in Florida. You got us all one of those big buses, and we all drove from Hales all the way to Orlando, Florida, man. It was a crazy experience. But it was something that we will never forget. Hopping off that bus, ain't showered or nothing. Put your jerseys on. We walked through the big helmet to go check in. You see all the different teams. You hear about the Naperville Patriots. You get to see them live. The mama tell you, my son pulled my car to work out and stuff like that, trying to put fear in you. And we like, cool, he gonna have to show us then. You know what I'm saying? Like, he got to show me he pulled that car. You know, playing on national TV. It's an experience that I'll never forget. Or even I don't even remember the camp we had that summer when Miss Graham was teaching.
Your dad,
teaching. Abdullah was working us out. Man, it's things like I would never forget. I met people that I still love to this day, with Evan and Marzik. Like those are my people. And I've been
Yeah,
knowing them
yeah,
since kids, and it's all thanks to you. I appreciate you
yeah.
so much for that, man.
Well, you think
Well,
about this, our Attorney General Kwame Raoul's son was running around in that camp as well. So,
oh
it's you
yes,
you never know who's around, right? You never know where
yeah,
these people are going. You never, and this again, it goes back to it. This is what it ultimately is all about, man.
it's all about
you know,
yeah,
it's all about the relationships and the connectivity that we can have with one another and some of the shared experiences. Because trust me, I mean, I was I was working all the time in the Big Ten, so I wasn't
yes,
on that bus, and quite frankly, I wasn't getting on that bus. The truth be told, I mean, it wasn't going to happen.
yes.
I
We
was flying,
definitely
but
with some
see,
kids on
one
that
of the things.
bus.
Here's what's important, though. I'll never forget. We were at Lawndale at the time, and one of Howard's buddies named Solomon, um, his mother, were renting a lawnmower. Solomon was renting the lawnmower so he could cut grass to be able to pay for his fees, right? To go to just play in the league on the West Side, right? Just to play in the league. So the team, it's time for us. Okay, we're going down to Florida. Solomon spent all the money, all the money he made was spent for fees and equipment and
Right.
all that stuff. So, he's a part of the team. Solomon comes down, he stays with us. So, he ended up taking the bus with them, and he ended up staying with us because his parents didn't go. But, it was just, he hadn't been out of the city.
Yeah.
He hadn't been out of the city.
Yeah.
So it's about the exposure side of it, and being able to see things and do things, and being able to grow, as an individual, and not really to grow. I tell you what it really is. It's to be able to want to do some other things. It's fun. Listen, I'm gonna tell you, you guys probably had the time of your life going down there to Florida, and you
Yes.
guys, and you can go back to Florida now and probably have a better time. But you'll always think that the time you spend in Florida, when you took the bus and you did this and you're hanging out with your team,
Yeah.
nothing will be able to replace something like that.
Nothing will be able to replace that. Being in a hotel room,
Right.
up all night before the game, knowing we
Up
supposed to
all
be
night.
asleep, sneaking to the pool.
Yeah, all
Man,
that. Even though they
it-
taped your doors closed, so they knew
yes,
when you went out the room, you still
yes,
snuck out the room anyway.
yes, yes. Man, it was a great time. This experience that I'll never forget, man. So I definitely have to ask, man. I know you and my pops probably had a lot of many conversations. He coached for you. Give me a moment where that stand out about my pops.
Man.
If you can go back.
There are many. To me, really, the ones that stand out were him in the classroom.
Wow.
When he was, to me, that's really where they stood out, because there was really a difference between coach on the field and coach in the classroom. He really took the academic side of this thing and took it in war, and thought that was really important. More important, I think, than most of the people that were kind of do it. He was holding you guys accountable about what was getting done in the classroom. And if you weren't there and paying attention and giving your homework and doing some of those things, to me, that was the brilliance of it, right? It really is not. He'd get after you on the field, he'd do that. But when you can watch a black man in a classroom be able to engage and be able to teach and be able to touch and get the right reaction and right response out of the young people, that's where the brilliance is. I mean, because it takes a special person, first of all, to be able to teach in the first place. I mean, it's hard enough to teach your own kids, let alone teach somebody else's kids that's got an attitude. So so now you have to deal with that. But I mean, he just had, to me, to watch him in the classroom, to me, is really where things stood out. And I know he did some really good things, you know, athletically with football, with basketball, all these different things. But what's really stood out to me was the way he was able to connect with young people in his classroom, and that was really special. And when we, obviously losing him was tough for you guys, but it was also tough not only for the Hales community but also for the junior Spartans as well, because he still, although he was spent most of his time coaching the high school, he had spent so much time and created relationships with the guys that were running around on the field, and their practice would be over and he'd still be hanging around because you were running around out there. So he was helping in that respect. But man, that's what it is, man. Life is short. It's real short compared to a lot of things, and that's why you have to max it out each and every day. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, you have to be able to max it out every day, because tomorrow is never promised to you. And you don't want to look back and be able to say, man, I wish I could have done, there are all things that you wish you would have done, but you want to be able to, know that, hey, that was a full life. I mean, what you poured in to other people's children, is invaluable. And that's what your dad did. And he did a great job of doing it.
I appreciate that. Rest in peace, my pop, man.
Yes.
Rest in peace. So I don't think I ever told you, but since I was a kid, my aspiration in life, if I wasn't making it to the NFL, was to be a broadcaster, like be on ESPN, be on a Big Ten network like yourself. So I want you to talk to the people, talk to me, what it take to be a Big Ten network commentator, and what goes on with it, and how do you live day to day with it? Like, talk to me about it.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you gotta love it. But you gotta love it to want to work at it, to be good at it. I think the challenge becomes, or one of the challenges that I see with young people that want to get into it is, they could have had a great college and professional career, right? But they don't want to put the work in because they already think they know everything about the game, right. And it's never the case. There's always a lot more to learn. Yes. And part of the process is learning that and being able to put yourself out there and be willing to do some of the stuff that some people don't want to do. I mean, look, I don't want to be up at 6 o'clock and be at the studio at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. I don't want to do that on a Saturday morning, but that's what I need to do to get myself ready, for our show that starts at 9. So, sure. There are things that, we had to do early. Now, thank goodness this stopped the last couple of years, but I would be there at 6. And if it was a non-conference, I could easily be there to 2 in the morning, wow. 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. because of West Coast games that were going on. Right. But normally, I wouldn't get out of there till, after midnight, no matter what, even when the season started. So, you can sit around and complain about, oh man, I don't want to do that. That's too much work. What are we doing? So if you want to do it, sometimes you have to do things that are uncomfortable and don't necessarily fit your schedule, right? So I think number one is being able to be accountable, being able to be dependable, and being able to know that people can trust you. And in this line of work, it's a little bit different. It's much different than if I were at ESPN. Because at the Big Ten Network, our universities are our partners. So what you'll never hear me say is, man, that coach needs to get fired. You need to fire this coach. You need to change direction, because that's not what I do. You're never going to hear me go really hard in on a player individually. I may say the quarterback position may need to play a lot better than they've been playing the last couple of weeks, but I am not going to intentionally try to call out a individual or coach. And there are going to be times when you have to make a strong comment, but they both know that, okay, he was critical here, but he was fair over here. So, you have to be more balanced. It's more of a tight rope that I have to walk at the Big Ten Network than some other people have to do it. ESPN, they can say whatever pretty much whatever they want, and there's really not going to be any repercussions to that, and good for them if they can do that. But I don't have that liberty. I don't have that freedom, and so you those are some of the things you won't hear me say. I think a work ethic, as we go back to that, that's got to be a big part of it, and understand it's the reality is it's hard, right? If you think about, you've got ESPN, you've got Fox, you've got CBS Sports, you've got the Big Ten Network, the SEC Network. I mean, there are not that many seats at the table.
For sure.
It ain't that many seats at the table, right? Yeah. And so when one of those seats becomes available, it's going to be a mad dash for everyone that wants that particular seat. So you got to be able to be able to stick to it, and when people say, "Hey, you might have to call some high school games for a little bit," you might have to do this. Devin Gardner, I think who's going to be a rising superstar, former quarterback at Michigan.
Yeah,
I mean, I think for the first couple of years he was calling high school games up in the Detroit area where he's from and training quarterbacks. I think he still trains quarterbacks, but he's now, I mean, you could see his talent bubbling. Now he's, with FS1, does a lot of calls for them. And, he's a step away from, being on the NFL side or even moving further ahead in what his broadcasting career can be. So, sometimes you have to do some things that, that may not look glamorous. I mean, the reality is this: when I first got into this business, I was paid with a $25 coupon to a horrible restaurant in Denver.
Wow.
But I needed the reps. I needed to, get as many opportunities as I could. So I wasn't in a position to say, "Oh man, that ain't gonna work. You're gonna have to pay me more than that." No, you have to, sometimes that requires you to do some traveling, right? You might have to drive an hour to call a game, and you getting that $25 gift certificate, but you're getting the reps to be able to do it. And that's what it comes down to, being able to put a reel together that you can be proud of and that people can get excited about watching.
Yeah. Was it a huge transition from going to playing in the NFL to doing sports broadcasting? Like, did you miss it when you was talking about it?
Yeah, you miss it, but for me, and I think most guys will tell you this. Outside, obviously the checks have changed, but outside of being paid, people miss the locker room. What goes on in the locker room? They don't really miss the games and the practices and that kind of stuff. Guys and I think former athletes, they miss being in the locker room. So that took an adjustment, took time to get used to. But then, you kind of find your sea legs, and you understand what it takes to be a part of a program, to be able to, how do you get information out of players? You have to, be able to build trust, and know that, I'm not going to be giving away, trade secrets. When Houston was at Notre Dame, I could go to a Notre Dame practice on a Tuesday, and Wednesday, be at Michigan's practice, and, Notre Dame folks weren't concerned about me, telling them about the scheme that's being run down there, and the same thing. So you have to be able to develop those relationships, and that's what helps you continue to move forward, the good relationships.
Okay. I'm learning a lot. Last question. Do you believe that it's easier to go from playing to being a commentator than going to school to being a commentator?
It depends on who you are, right? Okay. If you're Tom Brady, you've got hundreds of millions of dollars waiting for you when you decide to be done with football, right? If you're most people, man, you're trying to scratch and claw to figure out where you can get reps. But I'll tell you the biggest thing that's changed, and one of the things that I tell young people all the time, is you need to create content. This is something I don't do a great job at. I should be better at it, but I haven't done a great job at it. But I tell them, see, when you can create your own content, you can be in charge and you can be the boss.
Yes.
Right. When you do that,
yes.
You're seeing Pat McAfee do that. You watch Shannon Sharp do that. You're starting to see if a lot of influencers out there in the YouTube world have, been content creators. And I think that's one of the things that if you can do that, you can control things and you can get better at what you're doing. Right. Because you're getting those reps. You set up a podcast and you have guests on so now you're starting to create these reels, and it's something that you own. And that's really being able to take control of what your future ends up looking like moving forward. Now, it's still going to be hard. That's really what it is. But I think that I don't think that you would say that, Pat McAfee is upset about what he's doing right now. And he'll tell you that all started because I think he got arrested. He got arrested in Indianapolis, I think drinking or something like that. And he was asked to go on a radio show, and he went on the radio show, knocked it out the park, and the rest is history. Now, there's been a long time since that radio show and where he is right now, but he continued to build that. I mean, everybody's watched Shannon Sharp over the last, 2 years, what taking control of your own destiny looks like when you're a content creator. So, you don't always have to have the big name. I mean, it obviously helps. But if you're putting out content on a consistent basis, people are gonna like it because you're giving it to the world. So there's somebody out there that's going to identify with some of the things that you're saying. And quite frankly, the people that don't identify with it are also going to watch because they're going to say, I can't believe he's saying this. I got to see what this nut has said today. Right?
Yeah.
So it's that easy to do. I wish I could take my own advice, but I'm just not very good at doing that.
I'm definitely gonna take your advice. I'm trying to get more consistent with it. You're my episode 20, and I'm proud to say that I had 20 Chicago Goats come on, and of course I had to make the 20th special one. I've been trying to get you on here for a minute. You told me to wait till football season at the end, and unfortunately we just lost last Saturday, but I was like, I gotta shoot my guy a text and see if he's available, man.
But see, that's the thing, right? But what did it take for you to do? It took for you to ask, and then do what? Sometimes you have to follow up.
Yeah.
Right. I said whenever it was, let's do it during football season or during football, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But it's up to you to follow up, and I think that's where, and that's where we sometimes get stuck.
Yeah,
it's a follow-up. We can make the ask, but if you don't get the answer you want at that particular moment, how good are you with the follow-up? Nobody said no. It just we need to follow up. And when you can follow up and be consistent, man, please.
Yes.
You off to the races.
I'm trying my best. I appreciate that, Coach Howard. I appreciate you for taking your time out your busy schedule to come on my podcast, man. You know it's forever love between me and your family, man. Houston, Howard Jr., man. They're my guys. They're my people. We're going to be forever locked in.
Absolutely.
I'm going to call you after this, man. I appreciate you again. I love you, my guy.
Hey, man, love you too, man. Make sure you tell the family I said hello.
I got you, my guy.
All right, be good.
All right, thank you. I will.
I like those shoes. I like those.
They say something.
Yeah, they make a statement.
They say something. I don't know what it is though yet. Hey, I'm Howard Griffith, former fullback for the Denver Broncos. My top 3 memories.
Let's go base and go strong right, zoom, B right, C left, quarterback draw.
Elway, in that last touchdown, the sneak that he had was unbelievable. What a great play he made at that time.
Well, we've seen that a number of times in 16 years. Elway with a design draw.
I would say number 2 would be my first touchdown I scored in the Super Bowl. And guess what number 3 is going to be? Number 3 will be my touchdown, the one-handed play I had in Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh a few weeks before had given us the business and we were able to come back. And I think that touchdown really sparked our offense and got us going.
I was young and used to think of cap guns back when I was